This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
Ahoy there. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I've got a chat with Johanna Platow Andersson from Lucifer to share with you. She is an inspirational lady. She's a class act. She truly is, and you'll find out why throughout the conversation. I'm about to embark on 70,000 tons of metal. Going to get on my flight on the 26th of January, which coincides with the launch date of the new album from Lucifer. The album's called Lucifer V, or Lucifer V, I think it is. But look, if you're going to be on 70,000 tons of metal, you won't be able to miss me. I don't think I'll be wearing the Akubra hat, the Crocodile Dundee looking one. I thought, why not? Why not play up to the stereotype? Because I think hardly any Australians go on the boat. So you can't really miss me if you see me in my black hat with the crocodile teeth. Now, to the matter at hand, the conversation here is an in-depth look at the industry. What actually makes Johanna look forward to being a musician? You'll hear all about it. She loves it. And she talks about some of the challenges. But something else. Now, this shouldn't be news to anybody that's listened to more than 3 or 4 of my conversations, but we do dive into elements of politics and social and current affairs toward the end of the chat here. And Johanna, being, as I say, a classy lady, is very intelligent, and she has a bit of a story to share. Okay, so what song have I got lined up for you? I've picked one for you. This one is titled Immaculate Heart. Of course, it's taken from Lucifer V or Lucifer V. But you'll only hear that if you've tuned in via the podcast apps. For everybody else on YouTube, we'll dive into the chat now. Either way, let's go.
Hello.
Johanna, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Great. Have you been on a few calls before you got to me?
4 Australians.
Oh, yeah. Is that the first time you've had that much interface with us?
I've had some over the years, but that definitely is the biggest bundle in one.
How do we compare to, say, the Americans and the Europeans?
Oh, I love Australians because they're so down to earth and not full of themselves and just charming. What do you call that in English? I like the demeanor of Australians. Yeah. I can relate to it as a German.
There are a lot of Germans in Australia at the moment. You might be aware.
Oh yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea.
Yeah, a lot come here to go to uni, and they stay. So they think they're going to go back. That's the plan. And then they go, I don't want to go back home to Dusseldorf or wherever it might be. And they stay. Same thing. And I think you live in Sweden these days, according to a bio I was reading. So same thing with the Swedes and the Norwegians as well.
Well, probably because, the weather up here is pretty grim. You have very long, dark winters. It gets dark at 3 p.m. And
yeah, I know. That's nuts. How do you cope with that psychologically?
You have to take vitamin D extra, and you can get pretty depressed from it. Absolutely. I mean, I try to always book Lucifer tours around winter just to get out. We have a tour coming up next month. We go away for a month. And we'll go more south, to Germany and France, and that will definitely give us a little break from winter. And in November, we went to the States for a month. So I do try to break up the dark half of the year.
It's inconceivable to us because it gets dark at about 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night here. And we don't have daylight saving in Queensland, so it gets dark a bit earlier, but well, not today it does it. It's just gotten dark now, so 8 p.m. as it is now. So we're at the height of summer when you're at the height of winter. So it's right. I was watching a video, Spanian, he's a bloke from Sydney who goes to these hoods all over the world, and he was in, I wrote it down, Rosengard. Have you heard of that place in Sweden?
I have not. It must be really, really tiny.
It's in Malmo, I think you pronounce it. And it's
okay, yeah.
It's the violence capital of Europe. So it's the gun crime capital of Europe. And
yes, I've heard that, which is really weird because Sweden in general looks very safe and picturesque and very clean, But then all these teenagers have guns. It's really fucked up.
And yet they probably can't get out of the cycle of violence. Like the same thing happens in Chicago and the States as well. It's this cycle that just keeps on spiraling and spiraling. It's but to think of it in Sweden is just so bizarre. It's the last place you think it's going to happen.
Yeah, totally. I had no idea when I moved to Sweden that it's like that. It's very strange, but I think it has to do with hip hop culture. So these young little shitheads that still have underdeveloped brains, teenagers, they glorify and romanticize gang crime, and that's what happens.
You're right. It's long been the bane of the music industry from the perspective that a lot of these lefty types are happy to call out rock and roll artists whenever they don't promote certain causes or what have you. But then hip hop has long been extremely that way insofar as glorifying gun culture, saying things about women the way that they talk about women as being bitches and all of that sort of shit. And very rarely do you see the Rolling Stone or any of these other, excuse my language, shithead magazines calling any of this stuff out. It's just held up on a dais or on a platter and, hey, this is great music. And you listen to the lyrics and they're patently vulgar.
Mm. Yeah. But I think, in general, pop culture, it feels like nowadays people are dumbing down a lot, things in general, music and so on becomes, it's like a throwaway culture. When I step into a taxi cab, the music, like the modern pop music that exists today, it all sounds the same to me. And that's why I think in Lucifer we have, because back then, even the 70s, 80s, and even up until the 90s, you had a lot more variety within all the different music genres. And nowadays, everything gets so sleek and computerized, and I can't relate to it. And that's why Lucifer is leaning so heavily into old school forms of heavy metal and hard rock and stuff.
I was listening to one of your interviews before we got onto the call, and I was really impressed with your backstory insofar as you were right into black metal and death metal growing up, and that's your roots, that's your foundation, and then you crossed over and got into rock and roll, and that's the same as me. I've got to share that with you. But what was it about rock and roll, the real stuff, the stuff that I know you love, like what you've got on your jacket there with Blue Oyster Cult and Misfits in Danzig, that really drew you to that?
Well, actually, Danzig was the one that pulled me over to the dark side because I saw my first Danzig show in '93 when I was 14. And I was really taken aback, by the imagery. Like everybody was like leather clad and had black hair and, the inverted crosses. And it was satanic, but it was still rock and roll, But yes, I delved into like extreme metal, like black metal, death metal, and all that stuff for a while, and was for a while only listening to that. And then I opened up again when I got older, and but Danzig has a very big influence on Lucifer for sure to this day, and then I also started to kind of, appreciate my parents' record collection, all the classic hard rock and stuff like Deep Purple and ZZ Top and so on, which when I was a teenager and got into heavy metal, I thought, yawn, that's my parents' music. I think it's a natural progression that teenagers are not impressed by their parents' music at first, usually. You want to find your own thing, and I think that's why I went into extreme metal. But I had to realize later that really the good stuff is right there, back where it all started. And absolutely, Blue Oyster Cult and Black Sabbath are the main pillars of influence in Lucifer's music, for sure.
Do you think Lucifer V, I've had a good listen to it a couple of times, fantastic album, well done. It's all there. If you love heavy rock and roll, it's got that Blue Cheer and Black Sabbath inspiration threaded all the way through it. You can't get anything better than that. And I know it's going to be out on January 26th, but my question in and amongst all of that for you is, you richly deserve success as a collective, and I know Nicky's had quite a bit already, but do you think this is the album to push you over the top?
I don't know. I mean, of course, I wouldn't be honest if I wouldn't say that that would be great, and that's something that would make me very happy, because it would mean that it would enable us to keep doing what we're doing. But I can't say. I mean, so far I'm doing a lot of interviews right now, and so far somehow people are saying that the other albums are good, but this one is even better or something. And okay, now this sounds full of myself, but this is what people say. And of course I take that any day, it makes me happy. Not that I'm not less proud of the albums before, because we really do put a lot of effort into every album, and we really would never put something like a filler on an album or anything. But this new album goes maybe even beyond that, and I don't know what it is, but there's something about the album, so I'm hoping people like it. If it would put us over the hump, I mean, I have seen stranger things happen. I'm friends with Tobias Forge from Ghost. I grew up with the Rammstein guys. But that is the type of success that usually doesn't happen, one can hope it would be awesome, because I certainly don't want to go back to working 9 to 5.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point you make about Tobias and Ghost, because they seem to be getting bigger. Okay, at some point in time, Iron Maiden and Metallica will stop touring and stop playing. Maybe they'll do the Kiss thing and they'll become avatars. But either way, you won't really be able to go and see them in the same way that you can see them now. And it does mean that the next tier of bands, Slipknot, are going to go up. But it also means another tier of bands are going to go up as well, which I hope you guys are a part of as well. So do you believe that moving from Century Media to Nuclear Blast will be key to that success potentially?
Well, we had the option when our contract with Century Media ran out, because we had 3 albums in the contract, and we fulfilled that. And then, we got an offer again from Century Media, but we also got an offer from Nuclear Blast. So I had these both, and both are big labels in the metal community. Nuclear Blast being the bigger one, a little bit bigger. And since I'm the manager of the band, I thought, okay, we've done Century Media, they've done a great job, and I don't want to be ungrateful, but at the same time, I have to see what I can do for the band. And I'm going to give it a go with Nuclear Blast, because they are a tad bigger, and maybe, it will, they can reach other people, or other things can happen. So let's see, the album is coming out next week. I'm very curious to see how it develops. But I also want to say, we have always tried to stay true to our sound, and we have never tried to please anybody. And that's something that I want to stand by always with Lucifer. It could mean that we are forever condemned to be an underground band because of it, because we don't, if we wanted to, we could get like a super modern producer that gives us like a modern rock sound, because we don't sound anything like, modern rock radio bands. Like when I turn on the rock radio in the car, there's a lot of very generic stuff on there, and I just don't want that for Lucifer. So we are being sincere, and we don't sell out what we stand for, what we like, sonically. So, and that's not really the right recipe if you want to become big, So who knows? Maybe that will keep us small, but at the same time, at least, our fans will hopefully appreciate that we stay true to our sound.
Look, Nick has had a lot of success, as I've mentioned. He's certainly well known, very well known here in Australia, even to the extent where I think if you say you're talking to a heavy metal fan and you say Nick or Nikki, it's got the E on it, so we say Nikki when it's probably Nick, but people know who you're talking about. So he's Nihilist, Entombed, Hellacopters.
are the key bands that he's been in, but particularly with the Hellacopters, I understand has been his band for a long time. Is there any, it's not about advice, but is there anything that he says, or is there anything from his experience that he shares and says, oh, I think we should do this, that is pertinent to where you're taking the band?
Not really. I mean, of course, he has a lot of stories to share. And I think if it was up to him, we would probably do less, like, for example, in terms of touring and stuff, just because he's been around the block so much. He's toured so much since he was a teenager. So he doesn't really enjoy it as much as I do. I think I have a tendency to push stuff a little bit more with Lucifer, just because, you know, he has all these other things. And for me, I have Lucifer. So, but of course, I mean, he's also a little bit older than me, 6 years. So, of course, he also has more life experience than I do. But I am also very, like, strong-willed and hard-headed, as in, if I have a vision for Lucifer, I will want to do it this way, you know. And an example is, he doesn't want to tour more than 2 weeks. And I say, well, it's not feasible. So I'm going to book 1 month anyways, which means Nicke will come along for 2 weeks and he doesn't want to do the rest. So I have to, you know, find a drummer to do the other 2 weeks. So, but then we do that because I don't want to be, I don't want to compromise that, because you know, I love my work with Lucifer, and I don't want to sit at home with a band when I think we should be touring more. But that's okay. We have that arrangement that, you know, if we are both okay with it, and that works. You know, I want to tour more than he does, and I find a guy to do that. You know, so on the next European tour, we have the first 2 weeks. We have the drummer. Adam from Dead Lord, who now also plays in the Dead Sons.
Okay.
He's going to be Lucifer for 2 weeks, and then we switch and Nicke comes in. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you've got the two roles, fronting Lucifer, but then the management side of things. How do you maintain balance? Because it's a big workload.
Yes, it's a lot of work, and it's very underpaying. So it's difficult. Sometimes, you know, I'm thinking, fuck, I'm going to quit. I'm going to find myself a normal job with a regular income, you know. But then at the same time, you know, who am I kidding? I love, you know, being in this band, and I love the creative part of it. I don't like so much the management side of it. I actually kind of hate it, but it's the only way we can afford to do it. I don't want to pay somebody that would take like a huge cut of our stuff. And also, I'm a little bit of a control freak. So unless I would find somebody who I think can do it better than me, I don't want to give it up, you know. So it's a little bit, Nicke always says, you should just, you know, learn to let go and let somebody else do it. And like, no, but, you know, it's until I explain every detail to somebody, it's easier if I just do it myself, you know. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky situation. If Lucifer would become bigger, I couldn't do it myself anymore, because right now it's more than a full-time job, for sure. And I wish I could just focus on writing lyrics and playing shows and just the creative part, you know.
Something in there that you've mentioned has resonated, and I've heard it a couple of times, but most recently and most prominently it would be with Bill Hudson, you know, Bill Hudson from I Am Morbid and a few other things, Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He's done a lot of stuff, tours a lot, and he posted something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, that he's convinced that just about everybody he's had to deal with on the business side of things, so the business level is in the music industry, is a piece of shit. Does that resonate for you?
I would say people in general are pieces of shit. But with the exception of, like, you know, of course there's the exceptions that have a good heart, that are my friends and that, you know, I love working with. There's a lot of horrible people in the world, as you know. People who have weird agendas, people who are not straight up, people who play games, unnecessary things that make life more difficult. So yes, and it's not very rock and roll and fun having to sit at a laptop all day and answer stupid business emails. And nowadays, unfortunately, it is so that if you want to maintain a band, you have to do a lot of office work and you have to do a lot of stuff yourself that labels don't do anymore. There's all this social media bullshit. I wish I could just delete all of that and send out a fax to our fans or whatever. But it's part of if I want to, keep making music, I will unfortunately also have to do these things. That goes hand in hand, which is a little bit of a shame, because it also means that there's probably very talented people out there that are great musicians, but maybe, don't feel like doing all that crap, or they are not so good at the business side and therefore won't make it in music. And that's kind of sad, You have to have both.
Yeah, no, you've hit the nail on the head right there with your comment there. That's very astute observation there, because I've met some of them even locally. Great players, excellent writers. They've even shown me stuff that they've written on, not Bandcamp, I can't remember what's the other one called, where it's just SoundCloud, that sort of thing, or even just demos that they've sent to me. And I'm like, my God, this stuff is some of the best stuff I've ever heard. But they have zero intention because of the business side of it. Or somebody who said, I'll produce it overseas or whatever and ask $4 or $5 grand or whatever, and they get it back and it's worse. It comes back worse sounding than what it was than when they sent it out, when it was just recorded on the door, unmixed or what have you. So to your point, it's the safety of being on shore, so to speak, having a regular job, and in some cases we have families too, and risking it all to deal with pieces of shit in the music industry when it's already tough enough when you got to deal with pieces of shit, to your point, in the day-to-day, and you got to risk a whole lot like what you have to do it. Yeah, that's why I love doing this and having conversations with people like you, because you're brave enough to do it.
Yeah, well, I have to say I'm just also really lucky, because if I would still work full time like I did, and I've done that with my previous band, The Oath. I had a full-time job while being in the band and during Lucifer I as well. It's very hard to maintain a band when you work full time, and moving to Sweden and moving into a household with Nicke, neither of us have regular jobs. We managed to somehow live off the music, and for him it's no problem. For me, there's good days and bad days. Sometimes the money comes in good, sometimes it doesn't. Luckily, we have our own studio, and luckily we do everything ourselves and save a lot of money, because we do all the layout stuff as well. We produce our own albums. We there's so many things that we can do ourselves, luckily, that save us the money to be able to not have regular jobs. And that's why it works. But I see all the people around me that are at the crossroads. Okay, I want to be more successful with my band, but then it would mean I would have to quit my job, and my wife and my kids certainly won't allow that. And so a lot of people have that problem, where it's like, because it is a risk. You have to, like, if you want to survive somehow with music and you quit your job, you can lose everything, because it is very expensive to be in a band. Sometimes it's not feasible at all. We just did a US tour for a whole month, and all the work that I did even beforehand, all the logistics and all the emails and discussing and setting up merch and this and that, it's unpaid, and we lost some money, because nowadays it's very expensive to tour for bands, especially abroad, when you need visas and flights and all that. And the crew, everybody is earning money around me except for me, and the other guys in the band. It really sucks, but yeah, we do it for the music, I guess.
Did you have to deal with that thing in the United States, which no doubt happens in Europe, because I believe it happens in Australia, or I can't confirm it, but where the venue takes a significant cut of the merchandise?
Yes, that unfortunately is a problem in the US. And you have to have a good tour manager that manages to, somehow convince the venue to either take less or to drop it for the day. Or I think it's ridiculous that they do that, because so you get a fee, then they take like a cut of your merch, but they also, because you play there, they have a bar. We don't get a cut of the bar when they sell drinks and we fill the house, I think it's horrible. I think bands in general, it's the worst job you can have is being in a band, because everybody around you will make money. The record company, the crew, the agents, everybody makes money, the streaming platforms. The band is kind of like the bastard that has to bend over backwards, and basically you're kind of like a slave, to everybody else. And it really is so. It's now, you have to be an idealist and you have to really love making music.
Yeah, so true. Very, very honest too. I appreciate that. And people will appreciate hearing that from someone like you, okay? Because young people go into the world very idealistic, 18, 19, 20 or what have you, thinking if I do this, it'll lead to that. It doesn't, okay? You just work and work.
Yeah, a lot of young people think that start out in bands or in general, in life, they're waiting for people to help them. The thing is, nobody is going to do it for you. So if I would give an advice to like a young person, nobody will do anything for you. You have to roll up your sleeves and really get to work and be disciplined. And of course, that doesn't translate so well in a world of an artist, because a lot of artists, they are maybe not the best at being disciplined. And that's where you have people, that they have all the talent, but you need to have more than that. Unfortunately, it is so.
Yeah. And even worse, I'm a musician as well, and I've had this happen a few times. You bring people into a band and they start treating you worse than the people in the business treat you, like as if you're holding back all of this money or all this opportunity from them personally, and everything's personal.
Yeah, of course, a lot of people have preconceived ideas and think you somehow are rich or you have, the thing is, there's not much in it, and you really have to understand the business to, like, for example, not only people in bands, they when they are not songwriters, they don't know how much money is coming in or whatever. But the audience thinks, okay, they are on stage in front of a filled place, and of course, they have money, and it's like that. Actually, the people on stage are the poorest one in the whole room,
Yeah, you guys get to buy your beer. We have to have it given to us. Yeah. Yeah. But it is, to your point, you got to be idealistic, even from the perspective that you make all of these great friendships and these relationships. An example of that for you, if I'm right in saying, it's with Helmet from Belfagor. And you were, you were, I believe it's Glorifying the Devils. Is that correct? You sang on that song from the album The Devils last year.
Yeah, I guessed it just with like a little bit of vocal, some snippets of my vocals were used. Yes.
Yeah. Was that one? Did you go into the studio to do that, or did you send it to him?
I sent it to him. I just recorded it here in our studio.
Yeah. Do you get asked to do a lot of that sort of collaboration?
I get asked quite a bit, but I don't do everything just because I'm selective and I also don't have so much time. But when it's something cool, I definitely say yes. I love collaborating.
You certainly got the talent, and you're certainly good enough to do some collaborating with Tobias. So has that ever become part of the conversation?
Not yet, but I would love that, of course.
I'll make this my final question for you. And as I said, we've got a lot of Germans in Australia, and I've asked them a few times, and I love having conversations with people from Germany and asking this question, and I do it every time to people from that great country. And that is this question. Why, in your view, was Germany the only country that heavy metal never died? It never, ever went away. It was never out of fashion.
I'm trying to think, but in the States, well, I guess in Germany it's been, yes, I know what you mean. Okay, I think it has to do something culturally with how the people are. And Germany, heavy metal is kind of the music of the working class. I would say the heavy metal is the music of the simple man in the best possible way. I mean, it's straight on, and the community in the metal scene is very straight on. It's an honest type of music, I would say. And that's what I associate with it. And I think these are values that Germans hold very highly because, the Second World War really rammed our egos into the ground. And, we learned to be a dog with its tail between its legs, kind of. And times were really hard after the Second World War. And out of that, springs the first generation of, you had krautrock, and then later, you had heavy metal somehow spring out of this. I think it has something to do with with the straightforwardness and the honestness and the kind of down to earthness of heavy metal.
Yeah, I'd agree. Every German I've ever met has been honest almost to a fault, and I think that honesty.
There's a downside to being a little bit too honest sometimes.
Yeah, I've noticed that, but it's all in good faith, I believe. You've just got to understand how to take it. I think I learned that when I was a student, actually, with some of the Germans that I was there with. But all the, it sounds like I'm gushing with praise here with the great nation of Germany, but still, it is what it is. And yeah, you're right. I've done a lot of reading about what happened after World War II and even throughout World War II. It's my opinion, obviously, because I'm saying it, but the Allies should be tried for war crimes and a lot of the stuff that happened, particularly with what's that great city that got firebombed? Sorry, it's on the tip of my tongue.
You mean in Germany? Or
in Germany. Yeah, it was the Allies bombed. Look, my grandfather fought in World War II, obviously, and for Australia. But what was it? Dresden. Yeah, what happened in Dresden was disgusting. Yeah. Anybody out there that wants to read about, think that the good guys always win, go and have a read about what happened in Dresden and, that'll educate you.
Yeah, but I think war in any sense is always the wrong way to go about politics.
Sometimes it's inevitable, though, and that's why it happens. And we just can't resolve things through diplomacy, so it ends up being armed conflict. And you're probably similar vintage to me. I'm 45, and well, no doubt you're younger. But yeah, it's.
but it's 45, and actually this week.
This week? Oh well, yeah. Happy birthday! Yeah, but I grew up in an era where we saw the Berlin Wall fall. I remember it being into our living room, and we saw that, and you had this great hope that war was over and that the divisions between the political divisions that divide humans, okay, because you know what happened in Berlin where entire families were split apart and didn't see each other for those 45 years, or it's about 45 years or so. I
am from a family like that. So I am actually from East Berlin, and my parents were political enemies, and we applied to leave East Berlin to West Berlin, and they granted it within a year because the communists were very happy to get rid of my very anti-communist family. So when I was 6 years old, we moved from East Berlin to West Berlin, but I still got to visit. My mom would bring me, when it was summer holidays, to the border in Berlin. And on the other side, my biological dad or my grandmother would pick me up. So I could go through myself, hold my passport up to the border soldier dude that looked at me like, it was very scary, and it's really strange. Wow. I have very vivid memories of everything. Half of my family was in the East and the other half in West Berlin. So, and my dad, he was in jail for trying to flee the GDR when he was 23. And we know whole families that escaped in trunks of cars. A neighbor of my parents, he built his own little airplane and sailed over the border, crash landed, had broken bones, but made it. So we have a lot of family history intertwined with that big divide. Yeah.
Has anybody in your family thought about capturing that in a biography or a book of some kind? Those stories?
My father, he just retired, but he was a photographer for the Berlin archive. So he would constantly document for the big archive of Berlin the progression, from when the wall, like before the wall fell, and then throughout all of it, how it changed Berlin. And he's had exhibitions and books with that.
Yeah, just quickly, I'll just tell you this story. My father-in-law was from Croatia. Was going to get killed, so had to get out. And he was like just a scallywag, like he would muck up, not do the thing that the army and the military told him to do, and wouldn't join. And so they used to come around to his house and beat the shit out of him and threaten to kill him. And eventually it was just obvious. And he was from a more rural parts, northeast of Croatia. So he got out, and he was Catholic as well, and a lot of them were Orthodox, so they didn't like him, the family, anyway, for that reason. So he got out. But my comment, the reason I mention that is there's a lot of youth these days, not even just youth, but people these days in the West, in Sweden, Germany, Australia, that seem to think that we can scrap capitalism and go straight to socialism and communism. We don't have to worry about anything else. We can just go there because it'll solve all of these problems. My issue with
on paper, communism might be interesting, but in reality, so far, I have not seen a working system where it didn't make people suffer and oppress them.
And you came from that, so
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing. That's what I notice. All these people who grew up in Australia and Sydney or Melbourne have these far left views and are willing to push them to the point where they call everybody else a Nazi, whatever that means in these days. They haven't had a family member, or like you're the first person I've spoken to from Germany that's actually had the experience, family members that have been so heavily impacted by this, where it's divided families and society just didn't happen.
Well, they don't know all the horrible stories. My father, so when he was 23, he tried to escape. He tried with a friend together. They had a, what do you call it? Like one of these rubber boats, that you blow up. And at night, they tried to row to Sweden, two 23-year-olds. And they got busted, and they both went to jail for 1.5 years. And when you're 23 and you're in a hardcore GDR jail for 1.5 years, that's pretty tough. There was, you get forced to work. And there was so many young guys like my dad who commit suicide because they couldn't handle the pressure and the interrogations and the, my mom's first husband, he drank himself to death with methyl alcohol.
Methylated spirits.
Yes, in jail, and together with a group of friends. A lot of them died. The others went blind. People. The conditions were so horrible in GDR jail. It's unimaginable for a kid who's just dreaming of an ideal communist world, whatever, but the reality of it, we know a lot of families where somebody got shot at the border for trying to flee, or, my mom used to get interrogated because she was, when she was 16, she was in a Rolling Stones fan group in the GDR. And of course, rock and roll was kind of forbidden, so if you had long hair or you were a punk like my brother, you got really like grilled. And like, for example, my brother, because he was a punk, they wouldn't let him study. So he had to learn how to be, somebody who fixes roofs. But as soon as we went from East Berlin to West Berlin, he went back to school, went to university, became a doctor in physics with the best grade possible. And now he's a highly paid scientist in Boston in the United States. All this opportunity he wouldn't have had. My brother is an intellectual, and he wouldn't have had these opportunities in the GDR because they suppressed people who were just into punk rock or who were Protestant Christians or whatever, into the Rolling Stones. You had big problems, and they would draw you in for interrogations. Friends of my mom, who had long hair, guys, they just cut into the hair. It's like, I know so many horrible stories. And yeah. Anyways.
Well, thank you.
Those kids.
Yeah. Oh, look. I've got to be frank about this point, Johanna. It's very important that you share these stories too, because people aren't, and it's looked at as if it's some. It's just looked at as it's completely offensive that people take offence to these types of stories that need to be told. And just what I could get out of my father-in-law, because he barely spoke English, because he worked in the mines in Australia, and just didn't have to speak the language. He just had to read the important signs and sort of get on with it. So I could barely understand a bloody word that he said, because it's like this mix of Croatian and English. Even my wife and stuff, they're in that weird situations where they can understand Croatian but not speak it. Does that make sense? Like a lot of kids of migrants are like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I could see how much he drank himself. He drank himself to the point where he got a stroke. And he died from that. So he drank himself to death too. So we know that firsthand from within our, not me personally, he's my father-in-law, but I'm just saying that if you haven't got that firsthand connection to the atrocities committed under socialism and communism, it's the other side of the coin is that you idealise it. And these kids are doing it at the moment, and we're just seeing it again and again and again, and it's happening in these public institutions in particular, and these university campuses, and it's got to fucking stop. It's got to stop, because to your point about your experiences that you've just so eloquently articulated, that's what happens. That's what happens when you adopt these political ideologies. That's where it goes to, because in every instance, and as bad as GDR was, and North Korea is far, far worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah. North Korea, yeah, super scary. And scarier even so now that China, North Korea, Russia, and so on, all the bad boys in the world are like up and coming, and it's a bit scary.
Yeah.
Of course, you could be worried about the scale that's tipping somehow for the Western world, but let's not go there.
No, I agree. No, look, we could talk for hours about this very topic. Look, I'm a journalist. That's my degree, is journalism. So I do talk to people, and I investigate, and I go to where sources exist, and primary sources too. I don't believe what the bloody BBC says or the ABC here in Australia, because they're state-funded media, and so they have an agenda straight away. And it's just crazy that we got to this bloody point. And to your point, it feels like as though the scales are about to tip. So. But look, it's been one of those chats. I'm really glad that we had this conversation. God bless with everything that you're doing, by the way. I really can't wish you enough success, and I really hope to see you in Australia.
I hope so too. I hope we get there someday. Thank you so much for taking the time and having me, and have a nice evening.
Wow, I wish there were more people in rock and metal like Johanna. Incredible. Just the breadth of conversation I enjoy having on the show here, and I hope you enjoy listening to it as well. Okay, so there are many more chats over at scarsandguitars.com, and if you like listening, I know you like reading because you're not a dummy, let's face it. Certainly if you've listened this far in, click on the link in the banner of my website on the home page there, and you'll be taken to a marketplace of your choice. You can download my book. You can download a copy to trial, the first 40 pages or whatever it is. And if you do complete the purchase because you like what you read so far, hit me up, because I want to thank you in person. And again, like I said in the introduction, today's date is the 23rd of January 2024. I'm a couple of days away from jetting off for 70,000 tonnes of metal. If you are aboard the cruise, please do look for me. I'll be wearing the black Akubra hats. I don't think you can miss me. Be doing tons of interviews when I'm over there. Got plenty of things lined up, and I really look forward to compiling a good show when I'm there potentially, or more likely when I get back. All right, there's some more information to share with you about the book in the moment. Before we get to that, I'll bid you a fond farewell. I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, so my name's Andrew Mackay Smith. Stay well. Until next time, it's a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silenos from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
You know, my name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot. And
we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.